Man, do I have a lot to talk about today. Let's start this episode by first talking about Nintendo because it appears that Nintendo is working on a 4K capable Switch, and this Switch is supposedly coming out in 2021. Keep in mind, as always, these are only rumors and speculations at the very moment, so no guarantee that this will ever come to fruition. But I do have to keep it real with you guys because, of course, I like talking about the rumors and speculations when it comes to products, and this is no different. Do I believe these rumors and speculations to actually be real? Honestly, if you ask me, I really do think there is a high chance that we may be seeing a brand new Nintendo Switch model next year. Honestly, I really do think we would have got one this year, but of course the pandemic happened. If you look at the state of the Switch in 2020, it's really a rocky road for the Switch. There's not too many games coming out for it. On top of that, there is a stock shortage for the Nintendo Switch. You can see the pandemic has really taken a toll on manufacturing around the world. So if all that stuff is wrapped up in 2021, that means they wouldn't be able to actually produce a brand new Switch in 2020. So it makes sense it would be pushed back to 2021. Now, there are a whole bunch of people talking about what type of Switch would come out next year if a brand new Switch would come out next year. Honestly, I think that we don't really know what type of Switch could be coming out. A lot of people say that the upcoming Switch is just going to be a Pro model, kind of like the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X, where they're just mid cycle refreshes, so it's still running the same generation, so it's going to play the same exact games. It's just that if you were to play this brand new Switch, you would get benefits of maybe better frame rates, maybe also better performance, maybe even a better screen when you're in handheld mode. So it wouldn't be a brand new console, it would just be an upgrade to the original Nintendo Switch and the Switch Lite, which I can see. But then a lot of people are saying no, it's not going to be a brand new it's not going to be a mid-cycle refresh of the Nintendo Switch. It's actually going to be a whole new generation for the Nintendo Switch. But honestly, I don't think that's going to be the case, just due to the fact that if you look at the Nintendo Switch has been selling too many units. I think it's close to like 60 to 70 million units as we speak right now, and that's a really big fan base. And the Nintendo Switch hasn't even been out 5 years yet, so to just start fresh with a brand new system like a Nintendo Switch 2 honestly doesn't seem too likely, considering also we're still missing some of the big hard hitters that were already promised for the Switch, like for instance Breath of the Wild 2. We also got Bayonetta 3, of course Metroid Prime 4, and those are all big games that are promised to come to the current Nintendo Switch, so they couldn't just drop the Nintendo Switch completely. I still think this is a Pro model where you'll get better frame rates in games, better performance, maybe a bigger screen or a higher resolution screen, and they're pretty much going to call it a day. And all these games that work on this brand new model are still going to work with the current gen Nintendo Switches that are currently floating around. It's just that if you want the benefit of playing your games pretty much just better, that's what we're talking about here. But in this thing, it doesn't really state what type of Nintendo Switch would we be getting, because here's the kicker. You guys know Nintendo makes a Nintendo Switch Lite. And what is the Nintendo Switch Lite? Well, the Nintendo Switch Lite, of course, is a handheld Nintendo Switch, and it can only play games in the handheld mode. It can't play games on the TV. And if Nintendo made a Nintendo Switch Lite that can only be playing games in handheld mode, then I think there is actually a possibility they could make this new Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Pro that comes out and it only connects to the TV without the functionality of the actual handheld mode in place. And why would they actually want to do this? Well, the main reason they would want to do this is because if you look at the Nintendo Switch doesn't actually have a lot of room in there for the best performance. Even if you go with brand new NVIDIA chips out there to actually power this brand new Nintendo Switch, it would be more practical to go with something like a modern day console that just sits under your TV without a screen and basically just can't be played in handheld mode, because then they would have more room in the body of this brand new Nintendo Switch. Even though it's called Nintendo Switch, just like the Switch Lite, it would only sit under your TV. And that way, by doing that, you would get very good performance out of it because it would be cooled better. Obviously, you can fit a better chip inside of it. Of course, overall, it would just be a better experience. Of course, you would be losing the benefit of having a hybrid console, just kind of like the Nintendo Switch Lite. But again, it is possible, and I see that too, just because, again, Nintendo already did that with the Switch Lite, so why can't they do that with the Pro model to give all these Pro features, but just to cut off the screen and cut off the handheld mode, just to give you the best performance for people who really care about graphics, if you're into graphics. But honestly, I think, even though that is a possibility here we're talking about, I really do think there is a chance that there could be a brand new Nintendo Switch, and it could have slightly better performance, slightly better screen. It could actually play games in 4K, because it looks like right here, this rumor says they're working on a 4K capable Switch. If they go with a 4K capable Switch, I don't think, with the technology that they have for handheld mode, it would actually be 4K. Even if you play it in the dock, it wouldn't be true 4K if it was still a hybrid system. I personally think what's going to happen here is they're going to do some kind of upscaled 4K or checkerboard 4K, so it's not going to play all the games at native 4K, unfortunately, because you look at the current gen systems, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, and a lot of times those systems can't even hit games at native 4K. A lot of times those are upscaled games or checkerboarding 4K resolutions. And we know with the Nintendo Switch, the next iteration, whatever it is, most likely it's still going to be a mobile processor. And of course, going with a mobile processor compared to a desktop class processor means that, of course, your performance is not going to be all the best, unless they, again, wanted to do something like a Nintendo Switch without the dock, and just make it a dockable Switch only without the screen. Pretty much a normal console. So we'll have to wait and see about these rumors and speculations. But yeah, I really do think that the Switch is coming in 2021. Now, what is the price tag of this brand new Nintendo Switch if it was to come out? Would it be $299? Of course, obviously, it wouldn't be $299, just because you look at the current gen Nintendo Switch, and that's still being sold at $299, and I think that is still a fair price tag for what you're paying for with the Nintendo Switch. I can see this Nintendo Switch easily being $350 or $399. I don't see this Nintendo Switch going over $399, just due to the fact that if you look at the competition, you're going to get more for your money when it comes to performance and overall better quality of games when you're talking about the game performance on the Xbox and the PlayStation. So going past $400 for the Switch would be insane. Could they do it? Yes, they can easily do it if they wanted to, but I think that would be too big of a gap right there, and it honestly wouldn't make sense. Now let's talk a little bit more about Nintendo, and let's talk about what's going on with Nintendo in 2020, because things have been looking very weird for Nintendo in 2020. You guys know that Nintendo's not really releasing a lot of games in 2020. There has been two big first-party games that came out in 2020, but besides that, if you look at the calendar and what games have come out in 2020 for the Switch, a lot of them mostly have been ports to the Nintendo Switch. Like, for instance, we had Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, I think it's called, and that one was a port. We also had a lot of third-party ports to the Nintendo Switch, like all those 2K games. We recently got an announcement that Pikmin 3 was coming to the Nintendo Switch, but of course that is a port of a Wii U game. So you can see in general, there's not too many first-party games coming out for the Nintendo Switch, and it's very odd too that we really haven't got any announcements of any brand new games coming this holiday season, and that's very weird, just because this year is the year of next-gen gaming. We're going to be getting the PS5, and then we're also going to be getting the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S as well. So it is very weird that you would think Nintendo would want to compete this holiday season, but it looks like there is nothing really looming for the Nintendo Switch in 2020. Do I think Nintendo is doomed in 2020? No, definitely not, because if you look at how many Switches have been sold ever since this pandemic, the pandemic has really been making people want to go out there and buy when it comes to video games and when it comes to Nintendo. And the Nintendo Switch specifically is the perfect handheld to buy during quarantine because you can take it on the go with you. You can play it around your house and things like that. It is a portable system, and that is a pretty convenient thing, especially when you're stuck in your house and you may want to move around a lot, combined with the fact that Animal Crossing just came out for the Nintendo Switch this year, like 4 or 5 months ago. I think that is a perfect storm for Nintendo, and that's also why I really do think Nintendo honestly doesn't even have to release anything in 2020 for the Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo would still be selling a lot of Switches and still be selling a lot of video games this holiday season just because of that brand new Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing has hit so many sales figures. It's just insane how crazy that game has actually sold, but it's still weird. You would think there would at least be one more hard-hitting game, and I still think that there is a possibility that there still has to be that one more hard-hitting game for 2020 just because, again, the PS5 and the next Xbox are coming out, and Nintendo needs something for holiday 2020. It would be very weird if holiday 2020 rolled around and there really wasn't anything released for the Nintendo Switch. It would kind of be like, what are you doing, Nintendo? At least release one thing that'll make people go, I really need to go out and buy a brand new game for the Nintendo Switch. But maybe this whole pandemic has been delaying games, or they're like, well, we'll just mess around and not release anything. We'll just hold off until 2021 because we have too many sales of Animal Crossing, and the Nintendo Switch is selling out everywhere. It's not really a big deal to us, which is kind of interesting. I don't really know what's going on, but just something to think about, that 2020 has been really messing up a lot of companies, and especially Nintendo. We really don't know where Nintendo wants to go with 2020 and 2021. Now, the next one up is actually about Fortnite, because it appears that Fortnite on Apple devices will be locked out of the new season, so you won't be able to download the new season if you already have Fortnite installed, because even though Fortnite is officially removed off of the Apple App Store, you can still technically download it if you already previously downloaded it and for some reason you deleted it, or you may already have it installed on your device. And if you already have it installed on your device, you can still play the game. It's not like they're not going to allow you to play the game, but they are going to not allow you to play any updates for the game or any new seasons for the game, and that's really going to hurt this game's longevity, just due to the fact that nobody wants to play an outdated version of the game. They'll be missing content, and according to Apple also, it's not going to be cross-play as well, so you are going to be missing some benefits as well, and that's not good news. You can see with everything that's going on with Fortnite and Apple, they really are pretty much throwing shade at each other, and you can see this battle is really heating up with things by trying to block updates to this game, but it is only fair. They violated policies in the App Store, so of course Apple could technically do what they want, and I'm not surprised that Apple's like, yeah, we're not going to support you anymore because you've been doing some shady things when it comes to trying to make your own money off of this game. We'll just not release any updates or block updates to this game. It's actually gotten so bad that the Unreal Engine is being blocked on the App Store, and any apps apparently that run off of the Unreal Engine won't be able to use the Unreal Engine. So you can see they're not just throwing shade at Epic Games for this. They're actually taking it a little bit farther by trying to block anything that uses the Unreal Engine, which is just insane. You thought this thing would have been a little thing that just came up and it wasn't no big deal, but yeah, this thing is getting out of control, and they're pretty much just trying to eliminate this game at all costs by removing it from the App Store, by removing updates to this game. They're just hoping that nobody actually plays this game from here on out. But of course, time will only tell if this game's actually going to continue to be on the App Store. Will it continue to get updates? I'm sure, like I said I think before, I'm sure that this game is going to be supported. This game makes too much money. This game needs to be on the App Store. This game's just too big. It's going to somehow make it back on. When will this come back onto the App Store? There's no really telling when this will come back on the App Store, but I have a feeling it's going to come back because, like I said before, it's just too big. It's one of the biggest games or biggest apps out there. It would be just weird to not have it on the App Store, even if they have some kind of argument going on about money and things like that. I'm sure they'll figure it out in the long run. Now, the next one is actually about Apple again, and it looks like Apple TV Plus is reportedly getting augmented reality component content. So they want to do some augmented reality with their TV shows, and that's kind of cool actually. And it is something that would actually make Apple TV stand out, because if you look at streaming services in 2020 and we look at how many streaming services we really do have a lot of streaming services when it comes to TV and movie shows, and there is a lot to choose from. And to be honest, it's kind of hard to choose Apple TV over the competition because the competition has already matured. There is a lot out there. And the problem with Apple TV specifically is the fact that you look at Apple TV, and Apple TV has one big problem. It's just too small of an actual streaming platform to where they're really new and they really don't have a lot of content. And even if they have some pretty amazing like exclusive content to Apple TV, the biggest problem with them is they don't actually also have a lot of content. And since they don't actually have a lot of content on Apple TV and a lot of variety at that, it's kind of like, how can you actually support or actually want to get a subscription to Apple TV when we have things like Netflix? And then of course we have the new kid in the block, and that is going to be of course Disney Plus. And Disney Plus just came out, and that one has a lot of content for a lot of different people. So yeah, they just have a lot of competition here, and I don't think a lot of people are actually talking about Apple TV or subscribing to Apple TV. I just really think it makes sense for them to try to stand out as much as possible. They can have all the exclusivity in the world and have all their exclusive shows, but they're just too small at the very moment that like Netflix exclusives are just honestly better and they have more to offer, and you're better off just paying that. Sure, there is one difference between Apple TV compared to the competition. It is one of the more cheaper streaming services out there in the world. We're only talking about like $4.99 for Apple TV. I do believe we're not talking about like $10 or $11 here. We're talking about bottom of the barrel here, but I mean, it does show that there's not a lot of content on Apple TV. But it is cool that they are going to be getting augmented reality, because I really do think this is going to be a game changer for Apple TV. It will make them stand out from the crowd when we talk about streaming services, because they don't really have a lot to offer. Even if they get their own exclusive shows, they need to really do something to have stand out from the crowd. Apparently, this is not going to work on every single Apple device, of course. It's only going to work with certain Apple devices. Like, for instance, it's going to work with the the new iPad Pros that have the LiDAR sensor. And, of course, those ones are equipped to do augmented reality very well. I think the iPhones do augmented reality just as well. But the only thing about that is they're not as effective because they don't really have a sensor that's built around augmented reality. Now, how are they going to implement augmented reality into Apple TV? It's really hard to say. Honestly, I can see augmented reality being incorporated into Apple TV. Like, for instance, if you watch a show on Apple TV and then you want to maybe look at something in the actual TV show, maybe you can bring it up through augmented reality. I can actually see them doing that. So have specific shows that are geared towards augmented reality, or maybe have these like game shows or like these experiences you can have in augmented reality. This would also be really cool, not just because it would bring some reason to actually subscribe to Apple TV, but it would also give a reason to why you need to use augmented reality. Because up until this point, for me personally, I was always a person that was like, yeah, I think augmented reality is really cool as like a technology, but it's not really practical, and it's not really all too useful, honestly, in my everyday today life. So it's kind of like you need to give me a reason to want to use augmented reality, and this may be a very good reason to make me want to use augmented reality. So we'll have to wait and see on this, but I think it is very interesting that they actually want to try to use augmented reality in a better way, and especially they want to incorporate it with Apple TV. And it makes sense because nowadays the business model for each and every company, of course, is going to be about that subscription service. How many people can you get on board with your subscription services? Because subscription services are more beneficial than just one-time payment. So if you can get people paying each and every month for a service, you're going to be good for your business. Now, the next one up is actually about cameras, because it looks like more companies out there are trying to make dedicated cameras, webcams, because again, going back to 2020 is the year of the pandemic, and since 2020 is the year of the pandemic, that does mean a lot of people are staying at home, and a lot of people have to do things at home. And so the number of webcams that have been sold recently have been through the roof, and apparently it's gotten so bad for the webcam industry that the webcams are on shortage, and you can't even buy a webcam at a store anymore or even online. In a lot of different scenarios, webcams are so in demand. So a lot of companies are like, how can we get people webcams but without actually buying webcams? We got an idea. Let's actually make our cameras work as webcams. You could already do this before, but it was a little bit clunky if you didn't know about technology and didn't know how to use your camera as a webcam. But now these companies like Olympus and especially Sony are making dedicated programs on Windows and Mac to actually work with your camera, so you can use them as a dedicated webcam. And that is actually a smart and practical way, because one, you will get better quality than just a standard webcam. Most of the time, or all of the time, when you get a normal webcam, there is something about normal webcams where you always see some type of graininess, or the quality is just not good at all. Most of the times, even if you get a very good one, they're just not that good. So by having a dedicated camera as an actual webcam, that does mean you will get better quality, and it's just more convenient. And a lot of people have these cameras just laying around, and a lot of times now in 2020 you can't really go out and use your camera the same way you would use your camera before, just because you're stuck indoors most of the time. So it's kind of like, yeah, we might as well make our cameras dedicated webcams and allow you to use them as webcams easily. So it is pretty nice and pretty convenient that now you can just plug in your cameras to your laptops or to your desktops, computers, and actually use them as webcams. And that is a very smart thing. Now, the next one is actually about a game, because it looks like Valve is finally releasing more updates for Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead 2 is actually getting some brand new content. I think Left 4 Dead 2 came out in 2009. I wouldn't actually really care about this, but the reason I want to talk about this is just because I am a very big Left 4 Dead fan. I played Left 4 Dead 1, and I also played Left 4 Dead 2, and that series as a whole is easily my favorite series, maybe of all time. That game is definitely one of the funnest games you'll ever play. Granted, one thing wrong with Left 4 Dead, you do need friends to play Left 4 Dead. It's really not a game you play by yourself. You play with friends, but this is some of the best fun you'll ever have with a video game if you ever played Left 4 Dead. So it is interesting that Left 4 Dead 2 is finally getting brand new content. I'm honestly shocked that Left 4 Dead 2 is actually getting brand new content, just due to the fact that you look at what Valve is actually doing with a lot of their IPs, and they really don't care about a lot of their IPs. A lot of it has to boil down to that Steam is doing so well in the industry. It's kind of like, why would we even focus on our games? But I guess it makes sense now that I think about it, just due to the fact that you look at Half-Life, and they did make recently Half-Life Alyx. Sure, that wasn't a proper Half-Life 3, but either way, it was a brand new Half-Life game. So you can see they do care a little bit about their IPs. and their video game. So it is nice that Left 4 Dead 2 is finally updated. Who's going to care about this? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people just because we never got a proper Left 4 Dead 3, so it would be nice to revisit Left 4 Dead, or maybe you've been playing Left 4 Dead for quite some time and you just wanted new content to mess around with. This is going to be the time to jump back in. And yeah, just overall, I would honestly prefer it if Valve somehow doesn't actually add new content to Left 4 Dead, but actually goes ahead and actually just makes a proper Left 4 Dead 3. That would be my number one game, maybe of all time, when it comes to buying a game. I know if you look at 2020 and then you look at how many different clones we already have of Left 4 Dead that have came out in like the last year to like 5 years, there have actually been quite a number of clones of Left 4 Dead, but there is just something about Left 4 Dead that always keeps me going back to Left 4 Dead compared to the competition. I just think Valve really knows how to make quality video games, and this game really does speak to me, and this game also really does scream quality when it comes to a quality game. If you want the best Left 4 Dead experience, of course, go with Left 4 Dead. It's just a shame we won't be getting Left 4 Dead 3 anytime soon, but again, this is nice that we are getting this without a doubt. Now, the next one here is actually about smartphone sales, because it looks like smartphone sales and shipments have tanked by 20.4% this year. And honestly, are you actually surprised about this? No, you shouldn't actually be surprised about this, because again, it is 2020. But it's funny though, even though 2020 has been a really bad year for just everything, it's interesting how many good smartphones have actually came out in 2020. You look at things like, for instance, the mid-range smartphone, and the mid-range smartphones have been getting really good this year. We got things like the OnePlus Nord, the iPhone SE2. We also got the Pixel 4a. I don't know why I said Galaxy. I meant to say Google Pixel 4a. So you can see we did get a number of different mid-range smartphones this year. Alongside that, of course, we got our usual take on the premium smartphone game, but the mid-range smartphone game had gotten really good this year. So it's very interesting to see that they're not shipping a lot of phones, but there are a lot of good smartphone choices in 2020, so that's actually very interesting. But yeah, this shouldn't surprise you, of course, with a lot of things going on and delayments around the world. Of course, sales are going to be down, and that's not good, of course, just because it will hurt sales in the long run. And I guess it doesn't matter that especially shipments are down, just due to the fact that I'm assuming a lot of people aren't actually buying as much as they used to, because the economy is suffering and things like that. So it overall does make sense, but it's just very interesting that shipments are down for this year. So it's going to be also very interesting to see the numbers that come out after this year is actually done, just because I want to see what the premium smartphones are selling like when it comes to 2020 and this whole situation. Now, the next one is going to be about Netflix, because it looks like Netflix is finally releasing a Resident Evil show, and I'm actually very excited about this, just because it looks like as time goes on, more and more video games are getting represented in TV shows, and that is very good, because years ago, there really wasn't too many video game TV shows, and what we had was kind of questionable. It always seems like in every movie and TV show representation of video games, they don't really have good representation. A lot of times, like especially movies, when they have to represent a video game, for whatever reason, these companies are like, yeah, let's go ahead and make a video game movie or TV show, but let's not actually make it too great. And I don't know for the longest time why these movie and TV show clones of video games always came out and were always crappy, and it's not fair to the fans of video games, of course. And I was always wondering, why is it always the case with every iteration for the most part? Sure, there has been some ones that were okay or just decent, but we never really had that one that was like, oh my god, that's the best movie or TV show video game related one out there. in the industry. But now it looks like people are taking this more seriously. Of course, we had the Detective Pikachu movie, and that one actually did pretty well. And then, of course, the recent one from last year this year was the Sonic movie. The Sonic movie did extremely well. It did so well that we are getting a Sonic movie 2, which is actually pretty badass, honestly, because I never thought that movie would actually did good. But I guess it's not really the actual director of the actual movie. It's actually the fans who spoke out specifically on the Sonic movie. Just because you remember when the Sonic movie first was revealed, they made Sonic so bad. It was like, yeah, how are we going to watch this movie when Sonic doesn't even look like Sonic? So fans kept preaching out. And if you do preach out, sometimes your answers sometimes your prayers will be answered. And in this case, they were answered because so many people had so much backlash against the design of Sonic. They finally changed the design of Sonic, and they finally delayed the movie. And then sometimes it is better off to delay your product instead of not delay your product, just so you can have the best overall product you can have. And that's what happened to the Sonic movie, and I am glad about that. And then moving to TV shows, of course, in the last couple of years, of course, we did get Castlevania series on Netflix. We did get another series on Netflix for The Witcher, which is pretty awesome. And now we're getting Resident Evil, and it looks like these are all going to be top quality shows when it comes to video game representations in TV shows. And I'm actually very glad that they are actually finally taking video games seriously as a form of media, and they want to make the representation as best as possible. And outside of this Resident Evil show coming to Netflix, there is also going to be an HBO show based off of The Last of Us, which is actually pretty cool. So you can see they are doing these ones that are a little bit more grittier. We have The Witcher, we have Resident Evil, we also got The Last of Us. So you can see they are pretty much gritty, but it makes sense. They want to make these ones that are a little bit more mature, ones that it'll really speak to multiple different people, not just people in the video game industry, but people as a whole could watch these ones and actually understand them and actually like them. I kind of do like that as well, and I agree you should do stuff that doesn't just appeal to video game people, but appeal to everyone, and that's what they're doing here. And it's pretty cool that they are going to be making a Netflix show based off of Resident Evil. Now, the next one is going to be about pre-orders for the PS5, because we never officially got pre-orders for the PS5. Heck, we don't even know the actual price point of the PS5 at this very moment. But as we speak right now, we do got confirmation about how we're going to be pre-ordering the PS5, because it's going to be very interesting. First off, it looks like for the PS5 specifically, it looks like they're going to be sending out emails to each and every owner of a Sony account. And if you do have a Sony account, it looks like they'll be sending you invites through email. So check your email frequently to see if you got an invite for the PS5, because that's how they're going to be doing it, and you can get an invite there. And apparently this is the only way to pre-order a PS5, and Sony did state that the PS5 is going to be in limited quantities only. Is it due to the fact that the pandemic is screwing up manufacturing facilities, or is it due to the fact that they are just trying to drum up business to seem like this thing is selling out like hotcakes, when in reality it's not selling out like hotcakes? They're just having limited quantity to mess with people's minds. That's kind of how I feel like with Nintendo and a lot of different companies who ship products. They purposely don't ship enough shipments, so it'll seem like to everybody, oh, it's sold out, so a lot of people actually bought this and this thing's doing extremely well. But in case it's not doing extremely well, it's just due to the fact that these companies always want to play mind games with you, and they always want to ship limited quantities, so you think that they're doing extremely well, when in fact they didn't sell as many as you thought, just because they didn't ship many in the first place. So yeah, it's very interesting that they're going this route instead of like putting pre-orders up somewhere. So I guess they only want specific people to do this, and they only have limited quantities for whatever reason. Again, we don't know what the reasoning is, but these are going to be in limited quantities. Of course, the big key thing about this pre-order situation is going to be price point. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what the price point of this thing is going to be. Heck, we don't even actually know the launch lineup of the PS5. But on that topic, Sony did state that they're going to have the best lineup in PlayStation history when it comes to the PS5. Is that true? I don't know. That's just what Sony's saying. Of course, Sony could think that, but of course, I might not think that. It just depends on what type of gamer you are. But what I can say is it looks like the PS5 launch games compared to what Xbox actually recently showed off. For me personally, it looks like Sony's actually hitting it more out of the ballpark than what Microsoft is actually hitting out of the ballpark when it comes to games for the actual system. So that's actually interesting. Now, the next one and the final one for today's episode is actually going to be about Apple again, because Apple apparently is buying a VR company. So you can see Apple is kind of interested in VR. It's interesting. I just talked about AR, which is totally different from VR. So it is interesting that Apple, I guess, is taking notice of VR. VR is not quite the future yet. It is a very niche thing. Only certain people actually gravitate towards VR. VR is cool, but another problem with VR is very expensive. So how can you really get into VR when VR is expensive in the first place? So it doesn't really go hand in hand. It's niche, but it's niche because it is expensive to get into. I wish for some reason the barrier for VR was a little bit lower so more people can experience VR, because in a lot of ways VR is amazing. I personally used VR. I've tried mobile VR and I've tried gaming VR, and I've liked what I sampled of VR, and I do think VR is still the future, and I think there is a lot of implementations for VR. Honestly, for me, I think VR is actually a way more better technology than AR. AR and VR, again, are very different technologies, so it's kind of like when you look at AR and VR, you can't really compare them because they can do different things because they are different. But for me personally, I think there is more applications with VR than AR, just due to the fact that it makes you more immersed. But of course, that's what VR is trying to do in the first place. It's really trying to make you be immersed in different worlds and different places, unlike AR and things like that. And it's kind of interesting that they are buying this VR company. It looks like this VR company put real faces on virtual avatars, so it's kind of like they're working with face recognition, motion technology, and things like that. But just the fact that Apple bought this VR company gives me hope for the future, because Apple is a very big company here, and if Apple bought this company out, they can actually do big things with VR, and it has been proven time and time again. Usually whatever Apple does in the industry, a lot of companies like to copy. So if Apple buys this company, they can do big things with VR. But then again, Apple might buy this company and do nothing with it, because I know a lot of companies buy other companies out and just want to own them, but they actually don't do much with their assets or their properties or their technologies. They just buy them out and, like I said, don't really do anything with them, or they do something with them, but it's not really anything too crazy or anything too big to be concerned about. So I can see that as well. So we'll have to wait and see. But just the fact they bought them out is actually very interesting, and I actually hope Apple does something with VR technology, and I actually hope they focus less on AR, because for me, again, I'm just not really a person that is really invested in AR and really cares about AR. Even if you implement AR better, I just don't care about AR. So I would like it if Apple focuses on VR, but it seems like Apple is more invested and more focused on AR applications instead of VR applications. But yeah, something to just think about. And that's pretty much going to do it for today's episode. Anyway, guys,